Frasierizing your content. Now, back in the 1980s, there was a TV show that I was really a big fan of that was called Cheers. Now, if you weren't, or if you were born only 5 minutes ago, that comment will have washed over your head. But if you have seen the TV show, you're probably well aware of what I'm talking about. It was a really, really well-written show, very witty, very kind of snarky, but it was actually very, very funny. Now, if you weren't born more than 5 minutes ago, three of the stars that came from that show were Ted Danson. You probably know him from The Good Life. And then there was Kelsey Grammar. You probably know Kelsey Grammar from the Frasier series, but you also know him from maybe other TV series. I think there's one he's in, I don't really know much about. I think it's The Mob or The Boss or something it's called, but he's a gangster in that. You might know him from that. And then we have Woody Harrelson. I'm sure everybody knows who Woody Harrelson is. He's been in so many movies, but back then he was one of the staff in the show and one of the cast. Now again, as I said, it was very, very funny. There was, I can't remember if there was canned laughter in it. Now, one of the things that really gets on my wick with most American comedies is that they're not funny. If you take the canned laughter out of it, the majority of them are just completely dead. And I think if you have to rely on canned laughter to get a laugh or to make something seem funny, it's a sad state. But back then, as I said, the writing was really, really good. It was really funny and I enjoyed watching it. Now, when the show did end, I think there was a rumour going around that there was going to be a spin-off series coming from it, and everybody at the time was probably wondering, well, you know, what character is going to break away from the show? What character is going to have their own kind of, you know, show? Well, at the time I thought maybe Cliff, who was the postal man, I thought him and Norm, again these were two barflies that were constantly in the bar. Well, Norm was always in the bar. Cliff was a postman, so he would normally come in after work and show his face and kind of get into the conversation. But of all the people in that cast, I thought maybe the writers would have gone off in their direction because they were really funny and you never really saw what was going on in their kind of back life. You'd only seen them when they were sitting at the bar, but you never seen what it was like when they went home or what the jobs were like and all those different things. But it ended up that Kelsey Grammer's character got a series written about them. And Kelsey Grammer at the time, his character was called Frasier, and he was the kind of psychologist that again was drinking at the bar. But for whatever reason, I don't know how he actually ended up drinking at the bar. Why would somebody who was a kind of successful or kind of going to be successful psychologist, why would he be drinking in a bar regularly? But anyway, he was there and the show kind of spun off in his direction, and you're probably well aware of the show Frasier and how successful it has been. And again, it's one of my favourite shows. I think it's really, really well written. Again, it doesn't rely on all this canned laughter to be funny because it is genuinely funny. But people were surprised that it had gone in that direction because that was a character that probably wasn't on people's radar. Now, what am I trying to get at with all this Frasierizing your content? What I mean is, sometimes the hardest thing to do is look at a blank page and not to know what to write about. You know, when you're looking at that blank cursor and you're thinking, well, what will I write about today? What will I book? Or what will I base my next book on? Or whatever. Sometimes the hardest thing is looking at a blank page and coming up with ideas. Whereas maybe you should Fraserize your content. Now, again, what I mean by that is maybe you could take some of your content and maybe you could reuse it. Maybe you could shoot off in a different direction with it. So if you are maybe somebody who is in fiction writing, there could be a couple of characters in your book that may be coming up regularly, and maybe instead of trying to come up with a kind of new character, new storylines and all those different things, if you have maybe a little bit of an audience actually reading your books already, why not maybe just branch off in a different direction? Take one of the characters that people like and then go write a series of books on them. You know, even if you go to something like maybe Star Wars or something like that, you could Fraserize off in a couple of different directions. You could go off with a book series on Darth Vader, which I think there is, and there's comics on it. You could go maybe branch off in a direction with Harrison Ford as Han Solo, and you could write books about Han Solo. Again, I think there is actually books on all those different characters, but again, you have this kind of central kind of Star Wars hub, and you have all these kind of spokes shooting off in different directions. So maybe instead of you coming up with new characters, coming up with book ideas, wondering what you should write about again, or write about today, why not maybe shoot off in one of those spokes from your main hub and Fraserize your content? Create a book series with a character maybe that has a lot of backstory that you could explore, and they could go off and have their own adventures. Or even if maybe you aren't in fiction writing, is there any blog post you could Fraserize off of? Maybe you wrote a blog post maybe a year ago and maybe some of the information has changed. Maybe some of the things you wrote down which you thought were true have been debunked. Maybe there's new evidence that shows that yes, you were right in your thinking. So maybe you could go back to that blog post and kind of dip into it again, but shoot off from it. You know, again, even if you have maybe a blog post today that maybe has 10 different tips in it, that could become 10 individual articles if you took every tip and if you expanded on it, if you added to it, if maybe you put in some video content or some kind of, you know, more research or something into it, you could have 10 different posts from that one thing. So think about whatever content you have today. If you are maybe sitting down to a blank screen and wondering what should you write about, have a look at some of the content you created, your social media images. Again, if you have maybe 2 or 3 points on a social media image, you can pull that apart and you could have 2 or 3 different brand new social media images from that, all branching off from that content. Or if there's maybe a thought or a quote or something like that, could you use that for today's blog post? Could you use it maybe for a podcast episode or whatever? Again, just by simply Frasierizing or using that content as a springboard for whatever you're looking to do today. So if you are having trouble looking at blank pages, coming up with ideas, or wondering what the hell are you going to write about today, have a look at the content you've already written. Or again, if you maybe have gone through it all already and you've already covered everything, why not have a look at other people's content? Could you Fraserize off somebody else's content? Could you take maybe somebody like, maybe if you go to maybe a TV show like Star Trek or something like that, could you take maybe Captain Picard? Could you grab maybe one of the characters from their TV shows and again put a little bit of a spin on it, make it a bit more unique to you, so it's not, you know, 100% recognizable as Captain Picard or whatever, but could you do that? Could you maybe take somebody else's content and spin off from that? So sometimes that can be the easiest thing to do. Instead of coming up with brand new ideas, you know, is to kind of springboard off your content and somebody else's, and you'll find that, you know, over time you'll get better and better at it. It's one of the many things I'm actually doing at the moment to come up with podcast ideas. You know, some days I sit in the morning and I wonder, well, what am I going to talk about today? Again, sometimes I go back to content I've already written, quotes, tips or whatever. Can I expand on them and can I spring off of them? And as you're probably well aware, that's what's happening in these podcast episodes. So give it a go. It's really, really helpful if you are looking at those blank screens. So as always, if you'd like to find out where these pieces of content are, if you do a search for WriteCome, that's WriteCome.com. Now you can do a Google search, you can do a Yahoo search, iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Just do a search for WriteCome, you'll find all the content all over the web. And if you go to the WriteCome site right now, which is called, again, WriteCome, WriteCome.com. If you go over there right now, I've got a great free report which is called Words to Wealth, and in it I'm going to show you 10 different ways you can make money from your writing. So if that's something you'd like to try out, if you'd like to see what ideas I have, head over there, download the free report and give it a go and let me know how you get on with it. So as always, I hope I helped you out today, but as always, have a great day. Take care. Bye bye.